Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining from. We're going to get started here. It's 8 o'clock in the morning here in New York. Thank you again for joining. Thanks for joining this webinar entitled Translating Knowledge into Action: AI Approaches for Enhancing Evaluation Synthesis and Use. My name is Ross Tanner, and I'm an evaluation specialist from UN Women. I'll be moderating today on behalf of three unique working groups. This session is organized collaboratively by the AI and Data Analytics Working Group, the Use of Evaluation Working Group, and the Evaluation Synthesis Working Group. We have set aside an hour and 15 minutes for this webinar to allow time for our four panelists and for discussion at the end. Feel free to add questions through the Q&A function, which my colleague Patrick will be moderating. However, we encourage you to raise your hand and ask questions live after the panelists have spoken. Why are we here today? Well, we all recognize that we've fallen behind on the Sustainable Development Goals and that progress must be accelerated if targets are to be met. And to advance the SDGs and other development goals, government policymakers, UN agencies, civil society, and others are striving to make evidence-informed decisions to understand what works for whom and under what conditions. To meet this demand, there is clear need for evidence that is relevant, timely, and of high quality. Within the evidence community, we're seeing increased interest in the use of evaluations and the synthesis of evaluative evidence to inform decision makers and program implementers. For example, the Global SDG Synthesis Coalition is producing a series of mixed method syntheses covering each pillar of the SDG, planet, peace, and partnership. And now we're seeing a lot of this work coalescing and gaining momentum under the Evidence Synthesis Infrastructure Collaborative, or ESIC, which aims to build systems for delivering timely, inclusive, and reliable evidence to those who need it. Artificial intelligence is one avenue that is increasingly being looked to help bring evidence to users more efficiently. In particular, AI's role in evaluation exercises, including synthesis, is rapidly expanding. We are seeing its increased use for content analysis to extract and synthesize evidence, summarize lessons from large databases, and bring efficiencies to different steps of the evaluation process, whether that's screening, quality assurance, data extraction, analysis, or dissemination. We're seeing the development of AI-powered synthesis tools, applications, and databases to help connect knowledge producers and knowledge users. The intersection between AI, evaluation use, and synthesis is continuously evolving. And so we're happy to have our wonderful panelists today who are going to speak to us about the latest trends, advancements, and considerations regarding AI for evaluation synthesis and use. I'll introduce all the speakers now, and then we'll get into the presentations. Our first speaker, Ashrita Saran, is the Director of Evaluation and Evidence Synthesis at the Global Development Network and Director of Research at the Research and Evaluation Center. She specializes in integrating AI into evaluation and synthesis, and she previously co-chaired the Evidence Synthesis Infrastructure Collaborative's working group on the safe and responsible use of AI. She's going to help us understand the work of ESIC and how this work on AI is moving forward as a foundational investment area. Our second speaker, Harsh Anuj, is a data scientist at the World Bank's Independent Evaluation Group. He has extensive experience with the development and use of AI tools with a focus on applying AI to enhance evaluation quality and efficiency. He will discuss some of the practical and key considerations for developing AI-powered applications and tools for evaluation synthesis, and provide a framework for thinking and assessing some of the key aspects of these tools. Our third speaker, Nea Marie Heinonen, is the lead evaluation specialist in the Independent Development Evaluation Unit of the Ministry for Foreign Affairs of Finland. She manages centralized and strategic evaluations and has piloted AI and data science techniques within the ministry. She'll share the latest developments and experiences of her ministry using AI to advance evaluation use and synthesis, including the Open Eval platform. Our final speaker, Maya Vijayaraghavan, is the Principal Evaluation Specialist at the Asian Development Bank Independent Evaluation Department, where she leads methods, data, AI, and capacity development initiatives, including the flagship Shanghai International Program for Development Evaluation Training. She'll share with us her experience with EVA and DevGenie, digital tools that leverage AI to extract knowledge and lessons from the Asian Development Bank's vast document database. Each presentation will be approximately 10 minutes, and following the presentations, we'll open the floor to discussion and Q&A. As I mentioned, please add questions through the Q&A function. However, we encourage you to raise your hand and ask questions live after the presentation. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our first speaker, Ashrita, to begin her presentation.
Thank you so much, Ross. Just give me a moment while I share my slides. Okay, thank you so much. And thank you, first of all, to the organizers for inviting me here. And just can you confirm, Ross, if you're able to see my slides moving?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So, today I'm going to be sharing insights from Evidence Synthesis Infrastructure Collaborators Working Group 3 on safe and responsible use of AI. So, at ESSIC, we had five working groups. The first one was on demand side engagement. The second was data sharing and reuse. We were the working group 3. We had working group 4 on methods and processes, and working group on capacity sharing. And we also had governance and planning working groups. So, all of these grouped together, we worked to identify what will be the most able solutions to create this evidence synthesis infrastructure. I would also like to acknowledge my co-chair, Professor Malcolm McLeod, who was the co-chair with me on this process. Some more acknowledgements. So this entire work was a part of the ESSEC process, obviously. The insights and the perspective that I'm going to be sharing today are drawn from the discussions with the working group members. And obviously, some of these are my own views. So all the errors are definitely mine if I do any in this presentation. And the ESSEC work was supported by the Wellcome Trust. And this was a 6 months process. So these are my beautiful working group members. This photo was taken at the Cape Town consensus meeting. Obviously, it doesn't include all of the members because some of them couldn't be there, but it does include some of the members from the working group. So at ESSIC, our working group remits was to define what safe and responsible AI for evidence and evaluation synthesis look like. And we followed the double diamond approach for this, essentially, which divides the stages into four stages. So stages 1 and 2 were discover and define, where we, as a group, we worked on problem identification. So essentially, mapping AI capabilities to identify where are the gaps, what exist. Stages 3 and 4 were develop and deliver, where we talked about solutions. So we started with 50 solutions, and we then identified 7 high impact solutions through kind of surveys and identifying what exactly are the priorities for creating this evidence synthesis infrastructure for AI. And equity and inclusivity were obviously central to the entire process. So this is what the process looked like. And so, for example, in discover and define stages, if we have identified capability lacks like lack of validated AI evidence synthesis tools or rapidly evolving AI models that are not optimized for gray literature or global divide with LMIC researchers, in stages 3 and 4, which is the develop and deliver stages, we worked on identifying solutions that might help, prevent these gaps. For example, validation and benchmarking of AI tools should be at the central to it. Citizen involvement should be at the central to it as well. I'm sorry. Yeah. So, as a working group, we identified 7 key solutions altogether. And if you pull all of these solutions together, we were trying to recommend a full modular human in the loop ecosystem for the whole evidence synthesis process that's going to integrate AI and human evidence synthesis pipeline. That would include open, equitable, and validated AI tools within that ecosystem. And would also talk about governance, visibility, and continuous learning within that approach. So, our proposal initially was to create one or more open source evidence synthesis studios with capabilities to deliver a range of evidence synthesis approaches. For example, evidence and gap map, systematic reviews, or mixed method reviews. Essentially, it would look like a web based workspace where you run your reviews step, and for each step you can plug in either AI or non-AI tools through a simple API plugins. And these tools are then listed in a shared registry called as CISPIA, which is Comprehensive Evidence Synthesis Plugin Architecture. Essentially, a tool library that will tell you which AI tools work, how they were validated, and in what context. And alongside that, we also recommended to have evidence synthesis data repository, which would store this underlying curated data sets and extraction, not the tools or the workflow, but essentially the reusable data that could be used for future reviews and based on which future reviews could be built upon. So essentially, it was a whole and all package of interventions or strategies that we recommended as a working group. And the good thing about ESSIC is that it is not a static area. So all of these recommendations that we recommended as a group were then, curated into S6 roadmap, which you can find in the S6 website. And based on these solutions that were listed by each of the working group, now a lot is ongoing currently in terms of using those solution and strategies by the working group and making them into something called as action packed. So one of the, I'm sure you must have already come across these anchor investments from Welcome and UKRI and partners. One of the key milestones from the ESSEC global evidence ecosystem was that USD 126 million were mobilized within just 1 year of the ESSEC. There are 5 foundational investments that have been announced, and all of these foundational investments were addressing 16 of the 40 ESSEC roadmap solutions that were put together by the 5 working groups and influencing many more altogether as well. There are some transitional arrangement as well that have been announced by ESSEC for supporting governance and coordination. For example, a funder executive group, steering committee, and citizen involvement. Interestingly, the 5 foundational investments are pictured around these key solutions. So one of them is sectoral hubs. So these sectoral hubs are actually directing across certain different themes. For example, climate solution, crime and justice, inclusive growth. And the good thing is that 4 ESRC funded sectoral hub, which is a part of the Meteos project, are already announced, and they begin to operate. They are set to begin its operation in June. And there are also 5 welcome funded sectoral hubs. It's pending confirmation, but you can find details about this at the ESSEC website. The regional hub has also been proposed by through ESSEC, one in Africa and one in Latin America. There is proposal around open data systems as well, and living inventory of AI tools. This is essentially, I think, I guess, joint ESSEC UN partnership project around creating a living inventory of AI use cases and sustainable development. And there is a proposal around creating a monitoring, evaluation, and learning infrastructure as well. You can find more details about all of this from the ESSEC website, but the key bit is that there's a lot ongoing. It is not just that we created this strategy and this has been forgotten. In terms of the current status, things that have already been mobilized is 11.5 million pounds UKRI investment have already been announced. This is already up and going, and this was the Meteos project, which is essentially mobilizing evidence through artificial intelligence and user-informed synthesis. So this is already announced, and this is already ongoing. They had their first meeting in London in November. Also, the different key groups such as Campbell, Cochrane, and JBI, they have joined hands together and they released their position statement on artificial intelligence use in evidence synthesis. Again, this happened in November. There are 3 versions of RAISE guidance that have already been out and running. It essentially provides practical guidance to different AI-related users on establishing standards on different types of AI tools. So this is a very important guideline that is already out there and it's published and it's open source. What can be expected in terms of AI infrastructure? I think a lot is already ongoing. So I think the key insight is around accelerating integration of AI into evidence synthesis workflow to make living systematic reviews the new standards. So if you look at the Meteos project, this is again one of the key areas there. There is a lot of discussions around shared AI infrastructure, for example, including validated model libraries, open APIs, and global benchmarking system. There is a lot of going around supporting capacity sharing, but I think this is the key area where a lot needs to be done again, especially in terms of the open South. And I think one of the key, motivation is also alignment with the open science and AI reporting standards, such as RAISE, FAIR, and other guidelines by Campbell and Cochrane groups. I think in terms of role of stakeholders, it's essentially to accelerate what is already ongoing. For example, leading with coordination standards. This is where UN bodies, funders, and evidence organization could jointly establish and disseminate global norms and governance framework. There is definitely a need to drive the outreach and engagement through partnership, especially coming from the global South. There's definitely a need around empowering participation in design. For example, by embedding citizen feedback, co-creating workshop, and a lot of capacity building is definitely required in the global South sector. So with that, I think I'm going to stop here. These are some of the key references and also the link to the ESSEC website. So with that, thank you. And I
Great.
hope
Thank you
I'm
so
within
much.
the time. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. That was very, very interesting, very helpful to have as our first speaker. I think that comprehensive overview of ESIC and the work that's going on within the AI group. I think it really sets the stage for the other speakers and more broadly sets the stage for the work that's currently ongoing within the UN system and others on AI and evaluation and synthesis. Um, I think it's also really helpful to see just the number of people and the amount of thought that's going into this and going into this in a very systematic way. Sometimes it's easy to get lost in the kind of myriad of tools that are out there. So it's really helpful to see the work that's going on and to know that there's others that we can lean on and to see some of these um, tools and work that's coming out of ESIC that we will all be able to benefit from going forward. So thank you very much for that and look forward to discussing this more during the Q&A. Our next presenter is Harsh. I know Harsh, you're probably set up and ready to go, so I'm going to turn it over to you. Um, Thank you again, Saran, and over to you, Harsh.
Thank you,
Presentation looks
Ross,
good.
and thank you, Ashrita, for that excellent presentation. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon and good evening. In this quick presentation, I will take around 10 minutes to provide you with an overview of how we at IEG have approached the assessment of AI-powered evaluation synthesis apps. So let me start by providing you with an overview of this assessment framework. As you can see, the three main components of this framework relate to user experience and interface quality, the quality of information retrieval and responses generated by the app, and finally, the system performance and transparency. So these three components, we feel, capture the main aspects of such apps that need to be kept in mind when designing, developing, and deploying them. And this framework can also be useful when considering which existing evaluation synthesis apps you might want to add your organization's evaluation report repository to, or when you are deciding which existing app you want to leverage for your own evaluation synthesis work. So the last part where I talked about where I mentioned that you might want to think about which app to add your documents to. That's actually the context in which we developed and applied this assessment framework. Because in IEG, we are currently leaning towards leveraging an app developed outside of IEG and to contribute our documents to it. So let's look at each of these three aspects in detail. So the first one is user experience and interface. So when considering this criteria, we looked at four sub-criteria. So the first sub-criteria relates to the ease of use, and the second one relates to design clarity. These are relatively general criteria that determine how easily users can navigate the application to get what they are looking for. Then response presentation is important to ensure that users can easily read and absorb the responses generated by the app. And finally, interactive features such as filters or source previews can be very helpful for users to drill down into the details of the results. Next, let's look at the related to information retrieval and response quality. So let me just mention here that this criteria related to information retrieval and response quality is perhaps the most important one, since it relates to the real substance of this app. That is, without a robust retrieval augmented generation or RAG pipeline, even if the app provides an excellent user experience and is highly performant, it will not be useful for evaluators conducting syntheses. So within this criteria, the first sub-criteria related to the performance of the retrieval system. how uh, how relevant are the retrieved results to the user query. The second subcriteria checks for the factual accuracy of the responses compared to the retrieval document. Basically, we want to ensure that there is no hallucination by the large language model producing the responses. The third sub-criteria assess the quality of the syntheses produced by the app. So this aspect of the app's design is where a lot of collaboration between evaluators and data scientists is necessary to ensure robust performance in terms of the actual synthesis that it produces. Finally, the fourth subcriteria checks for the stability and coherence of responses for similar questions. That is, we would like the app to produce similar responses for similar questions. Finally, the third criteria relates to the overall performance of the app and how transparent it is. So to assess performance, we looked at the response speed and also the occurrence of any errors or timeouts. Then we also would like to have apps that are clear in terms of how much the user can understand how the retrieval was conducted and how the response is being generated based on their query. So some level of transparency is quite important. And then finally, we would also like to see some signals around responsible use of AI and data privacy on the app. And now I just have two more slides, so I'll be quick. So here you can see our overall methodology that we use to assess a few evaluation synthesis apps. So we first started by developing the scoring criteria that I have shared with you before. And we assigned scores for each of the sub-criteria based on a 5-point Likert scale. Then we defined 6 test queries that we would run in the app. And these queries were somewhat diverse so that we can capture the app's performance in different types of contexts. Next, we ran those test queries in the apps and then examined the responses. So we scored the performance of the app on each of the sub-criteria and also documented any notes. And finally, we summarized our findings into a table, such as one I will show you in the next slide. So here are the results for an internal World Bank lesson synthesis app that we reviewed. This app is called Lessons Explorer, it has been developed recently. So this app allows the user to query lessons from IG's validations of World Bank project level evaluation reports. I have not shared here the actual scores that we assign to each of the criteria, but I have provided a sort of a traffic light mapping of the performance where green is good, or orange is okay, and red is not so good. So you can see here that we found that this app performed quite well in each of the sub-criteria for user experience and interface, as well as the information retrieval and response quality. And the speed of the app was good, and it was quite transparent. However, we did run into some issues given that the app was in the beta stage, and there were some errors. And finally, we found that there were no signals around responsible and ethical use of AI or data privacy in the app. So that was a shortcoming that we noted. That's it. And these are some references that we used to develop the criteria. We also used artificial intelligence tool to develop this framework. And we found it to be quite helpful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Harsh. That was very interesting. I think many of us within our organizations are going through or will go through this process of designing some sort of AI-powered application. So I think it was really useful to see a practical assessment framework that could be used to systematically test and improve these applications or platforms. And perhaps in the discussion, there'll be others in the audience who have had experience testing or an AI application in a systematic way, similar to what you've presented here. So thank you very much, Harsh. I know you have to leave for another commitment, so thank you again for taking the time to join us today and to share your experience with us. Our next two speakers, they're going to talk a little bit more about such applications and platforms. So let's move along to our next speaker, Naya Marie. Um, so yeah, please go ahead, Naya Marie, over to you.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's my pleasure to join this event. I'll be talking about the use of AI in development evaluation of our ministry. Well, first of all, what to start with? Of course, the starting point for any kind of AI use is the enabling environment. At the government of Finland and at the ministry level, we have many enabling elements, such as various guidelines and an AI task force. And also we, as a government, have a corporate level use of Copilot, which has been introduced recently, among others. And also in the evaluations that we commission, for instance, we have systematized that in the terms of reference, we include some standard guidance on how AI can be used. Also, the planned use of AI must be described in detail during the inception phase and also must be very transparently reported. These are some of the kind of basic guidances that we have. Now, we have recently developed an AI-assisted tool to search and extract evaluative evidence from centralized and decentralized reports. It will serve as a living database that serves not just our unit or the ministry, but also the stakeholders too. It uses AI for converting documents to text, automating the extraction of metadata, creating vector representations of paragraphs, and AI-powered summaries. It also uses large language models as part of the tool. Of course, there's also limitations. What we in our tool want to highlight that the content represents the views of the evaluators and the evaluation consultants, not necessarily the views of the MFA or those of the evaluants. And also, because this is an open access tool, the responsibility of the appropriate use lies always with the users. And of course, like many similar tools, OpenEval can include biases and make mistakes. So it's always important to check the information. And we do guide our users to report to us if they notice any such deviations. You will find also some further information online, some user guides and some use examples, for instance. What do we see as the benefits of this? It helps really form overall pictures, for instance, on our support to specific sustainable development goals or human rights. It does really save significant amount of time when we search through the different evaluation reports and increases the shelf life really for all of our reports that we have compiled over the decades. And you can really search the entire evaluation corpus and materials at once. It enables quick use of existing tested information for any end users. And also internally, in our case, it does replace a manual task of reporting a certain evaluation reports or results in our internal management information system. So this really brings by design efficiency gains also. You can also further refine the selected search results or exports from the tool by using other tools like Copilot. But also this is really important for is that it does keep the human in the center. It produces raw material and transparent and rigorous further analysis. And here, some examples what you can use for. You can do efficient search through the hybrid search and filtering and find some relevant sections in the evaluation reports. You can also get an idea of the evidence coverage by topics or by instruments or by countries or even by sustainable development goals. You can also generate summaries of the search results But really what we noticed earlier this autumn when we organized a webinar on our tool, we also asked the audience what they think it could be useful for. And these were really some of the answers from the Menti query that we organized. And we do really see some of the same uses ourselves when we think about our future use of the tool. And in terms of the kind of more general aspects, of course, this is just one tool among many, and we need to use other sources of information too. But in general, really, tools like these can help in project planning, reporting, communication steps, for instance. But when we think about evaluation in particular, we do see some very key uses. We plan to use OpenEval evidence coverage, for instance, when we prepare our evaluation plan, which is a multi-year plan. We use the outputs in our evaluation assignments during the preparation of the terms of reference, or for instance, for desk reviews, synthesis, and also really some other assignments as raw materials for the different analyses. But now, next, I would just briefly like to highlight 3 different concrete cases where we find that these can be useful. The topic, of course, of the webinar is how AI can facilitate the use of evaluations. Well, this is really to highlight that the entire process of developing and rolling out such a tool, both within the Finnish and international stakeholders environment, it is in itself really an advantage. The process itself promotes the use of evaluation results. And particularly what I want to highlight here is what I've marked there as Development Policy Committee. This committee has members of the parliament and also CSO representatives there, and the tool was presented to them as well as part of the process in one of their meetings, and was quite well received and really what we think would serve as an excellent accountability tool, among others. The other example I can share is of course, the synthesis tasks that many of us really share. This is an example where we typically synthesize evaluation results by policy objectives. We compile our annual evaluation report as an evaluation function, and we typically highlight some key results as part of the report. So using OpenEval and similar tools, we can filter out the evaluation results by the different topics. And also when we combine it with the sentiment filter, we can really filter out the different achievements that Finland has been able to accomplish. And then, of course, we can export the data, the results, and then rework the whole writing and synthesizing process. And my last example here is it really shows how we can use some of the experts when we first do our searching and filtering, and you export some of the search results from OpenEval. This is what I did when I was preparing for a terms of reference of an evaluation, just to inform the design and the focus of the assignment during the drafting step. On the left, the OpenEval was first used to search the text paragraphs on evaluation results on women and girls and gender equality. And then I used some NLP with Python to get an overview of the topics that the results for women and girls relate to, according to this evaluation report corpus. So that was one. And the other one on the right side is similarly, when I pulled the search results out, I focused on evaluation recommendations on women and girls, and then also performed some clustering to identify clusters of topics within the recommendations. So that gave me an idea of what the recommendations, for instance, have been focusing on. I will not go into the details here, but just a point to highlight that tools like these can be quite informative also when we are preparing for the different assignments and designing the terms of references. My last slide here is to really highlight some more general points. Really, particularly focusing on the human in the loop, which we heard already in the previous slides and presentations. Have we really thought about what we mean in practice when we talk about human in the loop? I think everybody agrees that it's very important, but what do we really mean in practice? I think it's an important question and an important discussion as an evaluation community that we should really think about. Not really about what AI enhanced tools can do, but what they really should be doing or should not be doing. For instance, should AI agents conduct interviews? If yes, in what kind of circumstances? For instance, in our case, we actually discourage at the moment the use of AI for interviews for several reasons. Where does really the generation of knowledge take place during each of these analytical steps of evaluations and synthesis? Who owns those steps and the generation of that knowledge? Another issue is maintaining traceability and trail of analytical steps. This is, of course, very important for evaluations. Pressing a button is not enough. And also, as humans, we need to ensure that the evaluations remain independent. Of course, we are very dependent on different models, different biases, also that originate from some of these models and systems. Another one is, how do we secure the comparability of analytical results and findings? Because all of these models that we're using and the tools also, they tend to be evolving all the time. We're dealing with evolving tools and models. And also, what about the risk of aggregated oversimplification and shallowing of analytical depth and nuance? This may result in kind of a repeated and layered use of the sum of some of these tools that, for instance, rely on summarizing and synthesizing evidence. As humans, we need to be able to apply such tools so that we don't lose the richness or the contextualized nuance in the data and the analysis. And lastly, what about how is AI-assisted evidence received by end users, such as decision makers? And this is a question that my own ongoing PhD research actually is addressing. Nevertheless, everything said, still, I'm very excited about the possibilities and opportunities that AI and large language models can offer in evaluation. And of course, I'm very interested to hear the thoughts from the other panelists and the audience on these and the other questions that are posed by the host. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Naimri. Very illuminating example and very interesting to see what your ministry is doing. I mean, other than the tool itself, what came out for me was just the importance of using AI and developing these tools based on principles, guidelines, with a lot of oversight and transparency and how they're being used and when they're being used. And then also at the end, you're discussing a lot of these key considerations that we still have to think through and really recognizing that these guidelines and principles are going to be continually evolving and changing as we think through emerging ethical issues and as the technology changes as well. So I think there's a lot to think through in designing these platforms, and I think your presentation really captures a lot of the complexity there. So thank you very much for that. Let's move along to our final speaker, Maya. So yeah, please go ahead, Maya.
Thank you, Ross, and thanks to UNEC for inviting me to present at this seminar. What I'm going to present today are two related enterprise-level AI solutions that were developed in-house by ADB's AI lab. So we in the evaluation department certainly don't have the expertise, but we work with them, with the IT department, to actually develop these tools. The two tools are EVA and DevGenie. Both of them are actually for knowledge management. And they're both enterprise-level AI solutions developed in-house in collaboration with the ADB AI lab. I think similar to some of the points that Nia Marie raised, and I think Harsh also mentioned this, everything that's developed at ADB follows these responsible AI principles. There are 8 of them. I'm sure they look very familiar to everybody, who's been using and developing these tools. People and planet first, safety and reliability, explainability. I think this is something that Harsh also talked about. Privacy and security, fairness, transparency, data integrity, and accountability. So I don't think anyone can argue about these principles. They're fairly universal. I think they appear in some shape or form across all the institutions. So what really prompted us to think about this tool, specifically EVER, is we have a wealth of lessons from evaluations. Typically at multilateral development banks, we have a bunch of levels of evaluation. We start at the project level, then we have sector evaluations, country evaluations, thematic corporate. So there's a lot of them. And so there's 5,000 plus documents. It's really hard to actually look through them either in PDF format or in hard copy. So we wanted to find a way to make it more accessible, not just for ourselves, but also for our counterparts in ADB operations, as well as the board and senior management and anyone else who wants to have a quick sense of what the lessons are. So we actually had 3 different sets of users in mind. First was our colleagues in the operations departments who typically prepare projects. For them, we wanted to provide project level lessons by theme, by sector or country. For my own colleagues and myself, as inputs to evaluation, a downloadable list of lessons by theme, sector, country that we can export, as Nia Marie mentioned, export to another tool and then process it further. And of course, synthesis, which I think a lot of people seem to be using generative AI for nowadays, just some high-level summaries of some of the lessons. So 3 sets of users. And so how does this tool work? So I'm sure many of you have heard of the term grounding. So this really started with the grounding, which is using our own data and then cleaning it up, converting it into machine readable format. So we know all the sources that are being used by this tool are actually trusted data sources. So this tool extracts the text and then classifies the lessons. So we use a special classification model for this, indexes the data into a searchable system. And the last step, which is what is visible to the users, is a search and summarization. So what do we get from EVER? Recall we had 3 different sets of users. For the first set of users, what they get is a fully referenced project level lessons that can be used in new project preparation. Inputs for evaluation, what me and my colleagues get is a fully referenced downloadable table of lessons that can be analyzed further in a different using a different tool. And for those who just want a quick synthesis, they'll get a fully referenced high-level summary of lessons, trends, what worked, what did not work. So that's EVER. The other complementary tool that is also an AI-powered tool, and that's accessible to the same website as EVER. In fact, DevGenie is the default platform for a lot of the tools that ADB's AI lab has been developing. And the difference between EVER and DevGenie, EVER includes all the evaluation documents, reports, whereas DevGenie includes all the documents that are publicly disclosed on the ADB website. So it's a much bigger, I'd say, set of documents. I'd say, close to 100,000 plus. So that's a really big volume. What insights do we get? Lessons, again, from the evaluation documents. We could also extract some best practices, especially drawn from successful interventions across various sectors and countries. This could also provide some operational guidance, offering some contextual advice on project design, risk management, implementation strategies, also country partnership strategies, I'd say. And of course, we have some key cross-cutting themes that we are interested in across the bank. And so this tool can also give us perspectives on gender, climate resilience, governance, sustainability, and so on. How does it work? Similar to the tool that Nia Murray showed us, very clean interface. And we also have some sample prompts to help users get started quickly. It has a single prompt box for simple and efficient use. Easy validation, because full references to source documents are provided, so it's quite easy to validate them. Curated resources, as I said earlier, it's grounded in trusted data sources. So you know that the responses you're getting are more likely to be reliable and relevant. What did we learn from testing both tools? First thing we found was it was very easily adopted by new users. I think the fact that people have been using these large language models for a while now, for 2-3 years, very easy to use. Both of them delivered very efficient research assistance. I think this is, again, similar to what Nia Murray also mentioned. It makes search very easy and efficient. Obviously, human validation is needed. And there's also a need to continuously test and refine these tools because the technology is changing faster than we can keep pace. So I think that's something that needs to be part of the whole workflow and the process. So that's all I have on these two tools. If we have time, I have a few screenshots, which would be a brief demo. Ross, how are we doing on time?
Thanks, Maya. Yeah, let's go ahead with the demo. Maybe 2 to 3 minutes for a
just
demo.
2 to 3 minutes. Yeah, that's it. So this is
Perfect.
what the opening screen looks like. So this single tool has both Ever and DevGenie. So as you can see, where the orange arrow is pointing, that's Ever. You can see a clean interface. Type the question. DevGenie, very similar. It's just one tool down from Ever. Again, it's a really clean interface. You have some sample questions to get you started. So Ever, just to show you what the output looks like. So the search is show me lessons on urban development. It tells us that there are 96 lessons. See the little pencil, you can edit it, change the years, change the country, you can change the sector as well. And you can also ask a follow-up question. And what we're seeing on the next page on the left side is there's a button to analyze the lessons, and that brings up the summarization, what works, what didn't work, that sort of thing. So some really quick insights. And you can also get a full results table with an extract, details of the document, source. This can be downloaded, taken to another program, another tool, and analyzed. So that's a really quick, couple of screenshots just to show you what the tool does. That's it from me. Happy to take questions along with all my fellow panelists.
Thank you so much, Maya. Very helpful to see these examples as well. I think they build on the previous presentations nicely. And we're seeing a lot of interest from our stakeholders for similar systems to make, evaluation results and evidence more readily accessible. So very helpful to see like how you've done it and how you've tailored it. If there is more time in the Q&A, it would be interesting to hear about how you tailored the platform's functionality, because what really stands out is how it is tailored to the needs of different users and how you've been able to build that into these two platforms. And with that, we would like to now open the floor to discussion and questions from the panelists. So just thank you again to all the panelists for your presentations and sharing your experience. Just a reminder that Harsh had to leave, so Ashrita, Namri, and Maya will be available for questions. Please do use the raise hand function if you would like to ask a question or make a related comment. And of course, we have the Q&A function as well, which you can use, and participants can ask those Q&As, and our chat monitor, Patrick, can bring forward key questions from there as well. I'll take a number of questions if there are, and then turn it over to the panelists to respond. So I was going to see. So please do use that raise hand function or the Q&A. And while we wait for that, maybe I'll take a little bit of a liberty in order to ask a question myself. And really, my question is about sort of responsible use and uptake. And I'm curious if decision makers have been really keen to use the evidence from these platforms, or if they've been skeptical due to like the box nature of the AI generated insights, or issues of bias, or or the potential for hallucinations. Um, or maybe it's the opposite, and you're finding users are really keen to adopt these findings blindly, and that it's our role to sort of caution them against the risks of these tools as well. So I'm just curious how you've been able to build trust in these systems and the results for users, or how you manage the risks with the benefits of the um, evidence that's being drawn from them. Mm.
Shall I go first, Ross?
And then just going to see, I see Shiv also has a question. I don't know, Shiv, if you want to vocalize it or not, but Shiv just had a question on Eva asking about the measure for lesson strength, and he was wondering how that's determined. And I think that's a really good question, Shiv, because of course, like one of the keys is, like I said in the opening, is about providing high quality evidence, not just mass amounts of evidence, which AI can be prone to. So how were you able to accomplish that task?
Thank you, Ross.
We can start
Thank
with
you,
those two
Shiv.
questions unless there's any others.
Yeah, so let me take the second one first because that's easier to answer. The one from Shiv about the lesson strength. So all that's measuring is really how closely the responses match up to the question. Does that answer your question, Shiv?
So how it matches up. So it's not necessarily the strength of the analysis behind it, but the how it pairs with what was asked. So like how closely related it is to what you're looking for. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So just to go back to the point you had about trust, right? So remember I talked about grounding. I think the fact that the base for these searches and the base for these extracts is documents that we have confidence in. I think that really helps because it's not searching the World Wide Web. It's searching documents. It's searching a certain corpus of documents that we have produced, and we can vouch for the quality of the output. So since everything that the large language models or the classification model is extracting is from these documents, I think there's a fair degree of confidence that the quality of inputs is good. Obviously, to check the quality of the outputs, we have references for every single piece that's extracted. So it's fairly easy to go back and check. I think because it's fully traceable and it's very transparent, the chance that people won't trust it is very, very low. At least within ADB, I think we found people, I don't think there's any issue with trust at this stage. Obviously, especially the synthesis, I think that's where things, might break down a little bit, where I think you may need to go back and perhaps review the base documents and check that much more closely. But the classification model as such, I think, works reasonably well. And we fine tune it periodically in collaboration with the IT department.
Great. Any other presenters want to jump in?
Sure, I can jump in next. Thank you for that question. Yeah, I mean it's kind of evolving process, I would say. It's still quite early days in terms of open eval as a tool because we're still kind of in the process of rolling it out and raising awareness and also having our own first cases of using it in concrete contexts. I would say that it's kind of a process whereby initially, I suppose there was a lot of skepticism and discussion about the bias and AI in general. But since the kind of broader adoption of AI tools by the government, such as the Copilot, then I suppose people are less, discussing those issues at the moment. I think it's more to the other side of your coin that you presented. It's more for us to kind of remind people about the limitations and applying caution about jumping to conclusions based on some summaries and things like that. So I think it's kind of an evolution in that sense within the organization. And as Maya said, we have a similar structure and architecture behind the tool. So we are using the RAG model and using our own document, which we have published, and it's not searching the internet, and we kind of know what goes in and what is being done to the raw data and how it's coming out, and we have full traceability, as Maya said, back to the original documents and even to the pages that the information is from. So in that sense, I think it's very important to build the architecture so that, especially I think for the public administration, so that you can really be sure what is really happening under the hood. Thanks.
I can just add, Ross, if I may.
Please.
So just adding on to that, I think my panelists, they have already covered it. But I think as an evidence synthesis, I think we do say that with AI, at least for the digital evidence synthesis tool, it's garbage in and garbage out. So what we input into the AI tools, I think that's exactly the output that we're going to get. So I think that is where you would definitely require training, and that is where there's a need to invest in the evidence synthesis infrastructure, creating that infrastructure where these AI tools are integrated into the evidence synthesis and altogether. So what we input is actually coming from the right evidence. It is not just coming from some Google or coming out of ChatGPT. So I think one of the solutions by our working group, which we talked about, is Living Evidence Synthesis Studio. That does have a kind of a transformative potential to build all of this together as an evidence ecosystem. And I think that is where the ESSIC is actually making a really amazing progress in terms of its leadership, because it's bringing all of these areas together to create this evidence infrastructure. And once that is created, I think what decision makers get out of it is something which would be of value and would not be biased, just by using AI tools.
Great. Thank you, everyone. There's a few more questions that I can bring forth from the Q&A. I don't see anyone's hands up yet, but don't be shy if you want to raise your hand and jump in as well. So Elizabeth is asking if you've had to ensure source evaluations are more robust or have greater quality checks, knowing that they will potentially have sort of far more reaching use when they are synthesized using AI. So I guess this question would be more for Marie and Maya, but of course, just Rita, feel free to answer that as well. And Elizabeth also asked whether you've had to make evaluations more standardized in terms of their areas of inquiry or format. I guess another way to look at that too is how did you train those models on your specific reports? Like, was there kind of a training period so that they would understand and learn the format of those evaluations? And if you deviated from that, would that pose an issue for the system as well? Ashrita, there's also a question too around more focused on ESIC that I wanted to ask, which is just around whether you thought in the context of ESIC, if they're like, or what would be the single most critical policy or stand, across UNIG or UN entities or other development organizations to allow for cross-agency evidence sharing using AI. But why don't we turn it back over to the panelists? I don't know if Ashrita, if you want to start, and then we can go back to Maya and Marie.
No, so I think in terms of the S6 infrastructure, I think there are two or three things that came out to be the most critical. I think the first is about creating this governance structure around the responsible and safe use of AI. So I think that is where the UN entities and the key stakeholders play a major role, because setting that norms and disseminating that norm and what we consider as safe use of AI or responsible use of AI is something that is really critical to work around. And I think it is also about disseminating the entire work of the ESIC in terms of the kind of infrastructure that is visioned to be created as a result of this exercise cannot be created unless all the stakeholders join hands. So I'm essentially talking about in terms of when you say capacity building, when you talk about citizen feedback. I think all of this cannot be created in silos. This is where I think all the UN entities needs to join hands to create that safe space where the kind of this kind of infrastructure can coexist, and these norms and governance framework can be created and can be normalized and be used to create that vision that is already out there, but it needs to be inclusive and needs to be more disseminated, especially when coming from the global south.
Great. Thank you, Ashita. Um, Maya or Anne Marie?
Maya, you're muted.
Thank you. All right, so question from Josephine about whether the tools that we've shared today are available to other entities to customize. The answer, at least from ADB, is at this time it's only available internally. That is mainly to ADB staff and consultants. But I hope at some point in the future we can open it up. It's not yet available, but I know Marie mentioned that the tool that they've developed is open to everybody, but she can confirm that.
Yes, it's an open access tool, and it uses our centralized evaluations, and also some of the decentralized evaluations that Finland has been funding. So it also contains some evaluations from our partner organizations as part of the decentralized evaluation um, function. I also answered two other questions, whether it really needs anything special in terms of quality assurance or the structure of the evaluation reports. Not really. I mean, the point about using and developing such tools is that we can use and apply these on the go. So basically what we have as our standard processes for quality assurance and how we produce our reports, it's really the kind of taken as given. And then we want to ensure that these tools can really live with the kind of diversity that we're facing with the different types of evaluation reports, unstructured data. And this is really some of the benefits that of course, we and others see in using AI and machine learning and large language models, which can handle a lot of unstructured data, for instance, and make sense of the different contents that essentially really the different evaluation reports will have. And obviously you will have to optimize the different functions, for instance, the different parameters, different filters that you have in your tool. Some might be using more like a strict rules-based search functions, and some others might be more based on large language models and kind of the models inferring the content from the tools and so on and so forth. So we really need to test out what works in different contexts as a best solution. That's all I can say about that. Thanks.
Okay. I can answer the question about whether evaluations are more standardized. At ADB, some types of evaluations are standardized. Project evaluations are fairly standardized, so we have a similar format. Every single report looks the same, so it's much easier to set it up and train the model. And we did, in fact, train the model quite a lot. I'd say for a couple of years. This is before the large language models came along. It did make our job a bit easier once we had these additional tools available. But yeah, so I think some evaluations are standardized. It does make it easy, but not all of them are standardized. And in terms of quality checks, I think we've always had the same quality control. I don't think we've changed anything in that sense.
Great. Thank you, everyone. We are getting towards the end of our time. We've got a few minutes left. There's one question I wanted to put forward to everybody from the Q&A, and then we'll allow everyone to just have a very quick opportunity to provide a 1 minute kind of key takeaway from today. But the final question is coming from Shiv, and he's asking, as more UN agencies, multilateral agencies, and others, and evaluation offices start developing their own AI-assisted summarization and synthesis tools, how do we avoid creating a fragmented landscape of parallel solutions? And what would it take to move towards sort of a more joined up infrastructure as envisioned by ESIC? Is this desirable? Is it possible? Or is it really about having different tools that are built upon, agreed upon ethical principles?
I
I don't know if
can
anyone
just
wants to take a stab at that one. Yeah, Shrita, please.
so very quickly, I think ESSIC or anybody, I don't think so. We are advocating for having one tool for everybody. I don't think so. That is, technically possible. I think what we should aim towards is a common infrastructure, essentially that many tools can plug into. So essentially, if you see that technically, it should look like that they should have shared data standards and taxonomies. So essentially common ways of describing, say, questions, studies, outcomes, context, or equity groups. It should have open and interoperable APIs so that many UN agencies or bilateral agencies, they can, build on that API rather than, having to again start back. And probably they should have a shared reference data sets and benchmark. And if we are able to create this, alongside having a kind of a version for a built-in version or an API version with this, I think we are good to go from there rather than just having one common tool to do everything. So I think having a common infrastructure is something that we are aiming towards in terms of the Essex vision.
Great,
Yeah,
thanks, Shrita. Namri, Maya, any final thoughts on that
yeah,
question?
right. So my view is I think it's easier and perhaps more feasible, as Ashrita said, to aim for interoperability rather than having, one tool that can do everything from, and serve every single purpose.
Namri, any thoughts on that question? Otherwise, we can turn it over to some final takeaways.
Yeah, Nasrita really voiced already the good points about this question. And what I can add is, I don't see a kind of a one tool fits all kind of solution as a feasible future, but I do echo the points already raised about trying to find common taxonomies to the extent possible, because ultimately the development of such tools are really driven by the purpose of each tool. What is the information or the kind of analytical purpose that they are designed for? And I fear that the driving question might not be as number one, let's do a joint tool on, so that we, as a first priority, ensure that it's compatible with all other tools on the planet. So, I mean, this is just a kind of sorry to be a bit blunt, but a realistic also take on the question. But also, as I said, it's important to try and do the best all the best we can to ensure that these really are speaking the same language, using the same terminologies, and so that it's easier to really interpret also the various outputs that we can use for the common benefit, obviously. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much. And just to close, I'd just like to invite each of you to share a final key takeaway, just briefly in 1 minute or less. Namri, why don't we start with you, since we've got you highlighted on our screen already.
Thanks. I mean, it's been so interesting to just hear what the other presenters had to show. So I'm really excited to just learn the different applications that people have been developing. It's all kind of coming from a different angle. We're all kind of sharing the same purpose of trying to advance the use of evaluation and synthesis reports, and how to improve and make that more efficient, and maybe extracting information and making it more usable for the end users. This is really just a rich discussion, which I hope to also to connect back to with some of the presenters as well. And of course, I'm available for any further questions as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Maya.
Thank you, Ross. Again, it's been really interesting. I'm sorry that Harsh is not here, but I think he'd have had something to say about the tool that both Nia Marie and I presented. But I think that's also something we need to consider seriously, given this, explosion of tools that are being developed. How do we evaluate them, and sort of make those improvements that we need to make them more trustworthy? So that's, I think, a good takeaway for us. And yeah, I hope we'll catch up with Harsh later and pick his
Yeah.
brain about,
Hmm.
how they're using it at IAG.
Great. And Ashrita.
First of all, thank you again for inviting me. It was wonderful to hear all the fellow panelists. And I think we already know that AI is already transforming, the way we find and use knowledge. But I think if we get it right by being able to build a full modular human in the loop ecosystem of AI infrastructure for the whole evidence synthesis process, I think the reward is definitely going to be enormous, which would be we'll get timely evidence, we will get trusted evidence, and we will get accessible evidence that would be available to all. So I think the vision is to move there, and I think there's a lot of opportunity to join hands. I think ESSEC is one of the community that is showing us the way forward. So I think join ESSEC's website and join ESSEC's community. And I think it's always good to stay connected, to be able to make the change and to be able to learn. And I think I learned a lot today from the fellow panelists, and I'm going to look forward to read their work definitely in the future. So thank you again for inviting me. It was wonderful to be here.
Great. Thank you so much. And this does bring of the webinar. I'd like to thank our speakers once again for being here today and sharing their knowledge with us. It's been a really interesting discussion, and many more to be had in the future, I'm sure. Thank you to the organizers from each of the three UNAIG working groups and to UNFPA's IEO for technical support producing this webinar. And finally, thank you everyone for attending and engaging with us today. We hope it's been useful for you and that you've enjoyed it. And yeah, thank you again. We hope you enjoyed the discussion and enjoy the rest of your day.